will now call to order the regular City Council meeting of October 11th, 2021. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person council meetings in council chambers. Public access to the meeting is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Meetings are broadcast on Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. All callers will be muted and may only comment during the times allotted for public comment as indicated on the agenda. If you are on the phone waiting to speak to council and are also watching the meeting on YouTube or Channel 8, please know there are a couple of seconds of delay with the live stream. Please turn down your computer or TV volume as we approach the sections of the agenda reserved for public invited to be heard so you can hear the council meeting on the phone and to prevent background noise when you are unmuted to speak. Thank you for following these directions and for maintaining meeting decorum tonight. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Wikovich.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mullica will be absent. Councilmember Luke Manharamasa.
Here. Thank you. Please stand as you are able and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. City Manager Geyer, are there any responses to citizen inquiry?
One thing for council this evening, Mayor, our new Recreation Center, Senior Center, and Theater is officially open. So I thought I'd take an opportunity to share some stats of from our festivities last week. Last Wednesday, we held a VIP opening, and we had over 280 attendees. Thursday and Friday, we had friends and family days, and on Thursday we had 175 attendees, Friday 185 attendees. Saturday, when we had our opening from 1 to 7, we had well over 3,000 attendees come through our new facility doors. That's really exciting. And then on Saturday, we also sold about $5,000 in punch passes and memberships. And then, so just overall, a huge successful opening week, and wanted to share those stats with you, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Any agenda additions or deletions tonight? We have 3 proclamations this evening, so if council would like, they may join us down front. Wow. Hello. Hello? Hello?
It's on.
Yes? Okay. Our first one is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We don't have anyone stepping forward to accept this proclamation, but I wanted to provide a little bit of information before I read it. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There are select 9 health fairs offering breast cancer screening. They're affordable and convenient, and locations and dates are available on www.9health365.org. The State of Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's Women's Wellness Connection and Wise Woman programs offer breast cancer screenings free of charge to eligible individuals. Clinics also have health navigators available. And more information is available at www.cdphe.colorado.gov/WWC. Early detection is the key, so please take advantage of the services available to the community. Whereas during National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we stand with all who have been affected by the diagnosis of breast cancer, and we recognize all who have supported and joined their loved ones in fighting their battle, as well as the researchers and healthcare providers whose diligence and hard work gives hope to those living with breast cancer. And whereas in 2021, it is estimated that more than 281,550 women and 2,650 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer. And whereas breast cancer, also referred to as chest cancer, affects all genders, it is important for everyone, including people who identify as transgender, non-binary, and gender fluid, to get information and seek preventative care. And whereas there are over 3.8 million breast cancer survivors in the United States, which can be attributed to earlier detection through screening, increased awareness, and continually improving treatment options. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has caused individuals to delay seeking routine cancer screening tests. And because of such delays, physicians have seen more cancers being identified later than they may have been before the pandemic. And whereas wearing pink ribbons or pink clothing is a helpful reminder to everyone that there is no substitute for reaching out and engaging in dialogue with loved ones, family, and friends about getting a screening mammogram, which leads to early detection and earlier treatment options. And whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite residents in our community to prevent breast cancer deaths through increased education and regular screenings. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim October 2021 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Northglenn, and urge all residents to increase their knowledge about breast cancer, its risk factors, early detection, and treatment options. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 11th day of October, 2021. Okay, that's the first one. Does anyone want to add anything? No? Okay. We'll put that right there. All right, our second one is for Italian Heritage Month. So I'm going to ask our guests to come up. Please join me. Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I believe we have two different groups here, and I'm going to let you all, I'm going to pass the mic down. I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves and tell us what organization you are with. So I'll start over here.
I'm Tana Williams, and I'm with the Dante Alighieri Society.
I'm Veronica Goodrich, also with the Dante Alighieri Society.
Susan Gurley, Dante Alighieri Society.
Camilla Marcantonio from Dante Alighieri Society.
I'm Mary Younger, and I'm a Northglenn resident.
Pamela Marcantonio, Dante Alighieri Society.
I'm Bob Matavinik. I'm a Northglenn resident, also with the Dante Alighieri Society.
Can you tell us more about that?
It's a group that promotes Italian culture. We have cooking classes. We have Italian speaking classes. Right now, we're hosting a lot of events on Italian Heritage Month. If you look on Facebook, there's an Italian Heritage Month page. Also, if you look up Dante Alighieri Society of Denver, it gives a lot more about it. They put out a wonderful newsletter. They have monthly meetings where we have speakers, or we just had a wonderful play by a couple from Trinidad. It's a fun group to belong to, and look us up if you want to join.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here. Okay, I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas October has been designated as Italian Heritage Month to celebrate the cultural heritage, achievements, and contributions Italian Americans have made in our community and across the country. And whereas Italians began migrating to the United States in 1880, and today there are more than 26 million Americans of Italian descent in the country. And whereas Colorado is home to a proud and vibrant Italian-American community that has undoubtedly impacted culture and industry by influencing arts and entertainment, literature, business and government, medicine, education, social services, and science and technology. And whereas Italian Americans have had a profound influence on our country through their focus on family, faith, strong work ethic, and love of country. And whereas Italians were instrumental in establishing Colorado as a leader in railroad transportation, the mining, timber, and masonry industries, and agricultural production and distribution. And whereas Italians continue to enhance and promote the diversity of Colorado by fostering their cultural heritage, which is supported by the active Italian-American organizations throughout the state. And whereas the city of Northglenn joins in celebrating the Italian-American community and recognizes their contributions to the growth and prosperity of our state. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim October 2021 as Italian Heritage Month in the City of Northglenn and encourage all residents to join in celebrating the many contributions of Italian Americans. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 11th day of October 2021. Thank you very much. Give that
Okay, so I moved that back so we can get everybody in there, so we can have our guests on the front row and our elected officials on the step up. I think that works perfect. Joyce, I'm really tempted to make you go up one more step. What'd you go up? Can you go up one more step? Yeah. Of course I can. All right, that means those of you that are in the middle, you're there you go. All right, hold up your proclamation. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Again. All right, last one. Smile, everybody. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
All right, our third one for the evening is National Police Weekend, October 13th through the 17th. I believe we have some guests. Let's bring you all up. Police Chief Jim May is here with some friends. Hi. Hello, hello, everybody. Okay. Joanna likes to put a lot of 3- and 4-syllable words in here, so I'm getting better at it. All right, whereas the President of the United States, Congress, and the General Assembly of the State of Colorado have designated May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week of May 9th through 15th as National Law Enforcement Memorial Weekend. Whereas during Law Enforcement Memorial Week, and in particular on Peace Officers Memorial Day, we honor those officers who made the ultimate sacrifice while performing their sworn duty. And whereas, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, events and gatherings planned for National Law Enforcement Memorial Week and Peace Officers Memorial Day were postponed, and the National Law Enforcement Memorial established Police Weekend in October to provide the appropriate time and memorial events to honor the nation's roll call of heroes. And whereas in 2020, 295 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty in the United States. 3 officers were killed in the line of duty in Colorado. Detective Kurt Michael Holland, Commerce City Police Department. Deputy Sheriff Jeffrey Christopher Hopkins, El Paso County Sheriff's Office. And Ranger Brendan Patrick Unit, Larimer County Department of Natural Resources. And whereas the Northglenn Police Department tragically lost one of their own officers Corporal Edgar E.B. Raines Jr., who was killed in the line of duty 37 years ago on May 30th, 1984. And whereas it is fitting and appropriate for all residents to join together in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their community, helping to preserve the rights and security of all residents. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim October 13th through 17th, 2021 as National Police Weekend in the City of Northglenn, in observance of National Law Enforcement Memorial Week and National Peace Officers Memorial Day, to honor those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their communities. Dated at Northglenn, Colorado, this 11th day of October 2021. That's a hard one to read. All right, Chief May, introduce your guests and say a few words.
Well, I'm so honored to be the Chief of Police of in the City of Northglenn. I'm also incredibly honored to have such incredible officers that work, or officers plus my civilian personnel to work for me. To my left, this is Officer Mike Pila, Deputy Chief Randy Darlin, newly promoted Lieutenant Peter Rice. And during last year, during the pandemic, my officers did such an outstanding job serving the community and stepping up. And again, I'm so proud of them. I'm so glad they stayed healthy. 295 names on that wall is a lot. And hopefully we never have numbers like that ever again. But this Thursday is the National Candlelight Vigil. So if you have time at home, if you can light a candle as well, and just remember those officers that gave the ultimate sacrifices for their communities. And actually those officers that serve our community each and every day. So with that, is this the one I get? Yeah. So as a chief, I normally do get these proclamations, but I think tonight is very important that I hand it over to someone that was in the trenches during such a difficult time and year. And I'm going to present that to my officer, Mike Pila. You can represent the department, so thank you so much.
Okay, everybody for a picture? Lieutenant Rice, I think that's everybody. I got one. I can switch.
I want wide and kneel down.
Thanks.
Yeah,
here we go. All right, I think I can see everybody. Are you ready? There we go. 1, 2, 3. Again. I have to take a bunch. My staff is picky. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our first presentation tonight, Afghan Refugees Overview from the International Rescue Committee. City Manager Geyer will introduce this presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Leidy. Members of council, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Wilson. She's the Executive Director with International Rescue Committee here in Denver. I reached out to her not too long ago and asked if she would be willing to provide a real foundational presentation to all of you this evening for the benefit of the community as a whole. There's been articles and news stories written about the work being done in terms of Colorado's response to receiving Afghan refugees. And so thought tonight would be a great time for her to provide more foundational components. So feel free to ask questions. She has a PowerPoint presentation for you. And then certainly anything that you ask that we don't have answers to, we're happy to follow up on. So Jennifer, if you advance it, it should turn on. Okay. There you go.
Thank you so much, Mayor Leidy and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm happy to share with you an update on Afghan evacuees in Colorado, and specifically a little bit more about how they're supported and what you might see here in Northglenn. As City Manager Geyer mentioned, my name is Jennifer Wilson. I serve as Executive Director of the International Rescue Committee in Colorado. We were founded here in Colorado in 2016. However, the International Rescue Committee, or IRC, has been around since 1933. We were founded at the request of Albert Einstein to help people who were fleeing Nazi-occupied Europe and aid them in finding safety here in the United States. Today, we operate in more than 40 countries around the world and in 28 U.S. cities and counting. We are one of the 3 resettlement agencies that operates in the state of Colorado, the others being African Community Center and Lutheran Family Services, Rocky Mountains. We operate under contract with Department of State to welcome refugees into our community, and also with the Colorado Department of Human Services through the Colorado Refugee Services Program to serve a number of other individuals, refugees, asylees, Cuban and Haitian entrants, special immigrant visa holders, and others who qualify for services under the Office of Refugee Resettlement within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So tonight, I wanted to start off talking about Afghan evacuees. I think we have all seen in the news the situation that unfolded following the fall of Afghanistan and the return to power of the Taliban. The emergency evacuations that ensued were front and center for many, many weeks, and the U.S. is currently hosting 65,000 Afghans on 8 U.S. military bases that are known as safe havens, where they are being processed for resettlement in communities around the country. So I'd like to explain a little bit more about who was evacuated, who we are preparing to assist, who we are welcoming right now, actually, and who is already in the community. A lot of the individuals who are evacuated are people who served the U.S. mission in Afghanistan. So people who fought alongside U.S. service members, who were interpreters, mechanics, community liaisons, who worked for U.S. government agencies and U.S. contractors, and otherwise supported the U.S. as it was in Afghanistan for 20 years. There are others who worked in roles that were supportive of coalition forces or that otherwise worked to help Afghanistan establish what I think many had hoped would be democracy, journalists, women's rights activists, education activists, others who fought for human rights, and then American citizens and individuals with lawful permanent residency. So at the time that the country fell apart and the Taliban took power, there were people who had returned to visit family and friends who maybe were ill, to work for the U.S. government still there. And they were caught up in the situation as well. And then there are other vulnerable individuals. So these could be unaccompanied minors, people with health conditions, extremely vulnerable women, and widows. And they are all among these 65,000 people. We do expect more to come in, and flights are coming in daily of people who've been processed in other countries to come into the safe havens, and ultimately are expecting around 100,000 Afghans to come into the United States as evacuees. So to explain a little bit more about what I mean when I say processing and I talk about what's happening on these safe havens, I think many of you probably saw the images of people on the C-17 cargo planes being airlifted out of Afghanistan. And I apologize, I get a little emotional. I worked in Afghanistan and with Afghans for many years, so it's a hard scene to see. Those individuals were flown in those cargo planes and in a variety of other ways. You know, when there were commercial flights, some people were evacuated in Black Hawk helicopters, basically any way that we could find to get people out to safety. And they were taken to third countries, so you may have seen large numbers in Germany, large numbers in Qatar, people being taken to Albania and Kosovo. And there in those locations, they've been on military installations, and they've been completing security and vetting So the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program has the gold standard in the world for security and vetting. It's the process that all of the other countries look to ensure security in their programs. Basically, every security agency you can imagine is involved in that. So Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the National Counterterrorism Center, and others who are involved in counter-terrorism and intelligence do extensive background checks on everybody. They also do biometric checks. Many of these people already had to go through those because they were working with the U.S. military and had to have the same clearance as our military service members. After they're processed in those third countries and then brought to the United States, they are then processed through a Department of State site that's located near Dulles Airport. And they have their final stage processing done so that they can travel onward to these safe havens. And there, they continue processing. So some people, by the time they reach our communities, will be 2-3 months of having been evacuated and being in pretty much this imperfect limbo. They will get vaccinations, including COVID-19 vaccinations. They will have medical screenings. They will be assisted with immigration services. So the status that people receive if they don't already have a status, so if they're not a US citizen or they're not a lawful permanent resident, most people will be granted humanitarian parole. It's a 2-year temporary status, and it confers eligibility to work. So in order to have proof of their eligibility to work, they need support filing what's called an I-765, which applies for an employment authorization document with US Citizenship and Immigration Services. That is done on base. And then some remaining processing for their final destination. So there is some level of cultural orientation, also some other health screenings and various checks that are conducted. There is a 21-day waiting period because of the need for vaccinations to go into effect, not only COVID-19, but also measles, mumps, and rubella. So again, it's a pretty extended period before people end up here. In Colorado, we typically see about 3% of the national total of refugees that are admitted into the United States, and that's the same for Afghans. We've resettled Afghans for many, many decades. When I fell into resettlement here in 1999, some of my first clients were Afghans who were seeking political asylum. I think you all know that many Afghans call Northglenn home and love this community very, very dearly. We do expect that we'll see probably 1,000 to 2,000 evacuees coming to Colorado, possibly more. And of that number, we expect that we will see the vast majority in the Denver metro area. As I mentioned before, most of them will be admitted as humanitarian parolees. Some will be refugees or special immigrant visa recipients, having already gotten that status before they were evacuated. A very small number from the early stage evacuations will be paroled with special immigrant status, which just acknowledges that they were in the late stages of applying for their special immigrant visa, which is a status that's very hard to obtain, that is for people who served with the US military. Everybody is tested for COVID-19 when they arrive to the United States. People are quarantined if needed. They do get vaccinations, as I mentioned, and those vaccinations are actually required for them to have their humanitarian parole status. So some people have walked off the bases. They are free to leave, and then they are assisted in the communities where they go to make sure that they get those vaccinations and any remaining health screenings. Resettlement agencies like ours are preparing for quite a few arrivals. We've gone through several years when refugee admissions were pretty low. And now we are expecting quite a large number of Afghans plus other refugees to arrive in a concentrated period of time. So we've really been working on gearing up in terms of staffing, enhancing and reinforcing our community partnerships. So we've been really happy to work with the city of Northglenn on that front and many other municipalities and counties and state agencies, as well as non-governmental organizations. We are deepening relationships with landlords and property managers. Housing is one of the biggest needs. I'm sure you're not shocked by that for anybody in the state of Colorado. Housing is a challenge. We're also working on volunteers, gathering donations, and working with the state to really coordinate a unified response. Most of the people who will arrive here have what we call a U.S. tie. So that's a friend or a family member. In some cases, that's a veteran or an active duty service member who lives in the community where the evacuee is going to be resettled. And that for us right now in our caseload of Afghan parolees is about 80% of the people who have a U.S. tie here. Some have U.S. ties in California or Northern Virginia. However, a lot of those areas have such large populations coming in that unless you have a really close relationship, you actually are not allowed to go there. You can choose to go there, but you forfeit some benefits and services. So there's an effort to try to make sure that people are going to different communities around the United States. As I mentioned before, the vast majority of Afghan evacuees coming into Colorado will be in the Denver metro area. So we see the top destinations are the cities of Denver, Aurora, Thornton, and Northglenn. Also Colorado Springs, obviously outside Denver metro, but it is a destination. And then very small numbers so far in Arvada. I mentioned that we were working with the state to try to put together a unified response. And so what we've done is recognizing that this is unprecedented. You know, the numbers for Colorado are not huge compared to some other places. And also, it is a significant number of people that's coming in a shorter period of time. So we've worked with the governor's office to activate the Office of Emergency Management and pull together the unified command group that pulls different state agencies, municipalities, some of the non-governmental organizations and nonprofits typically involved in emergency response, resettlement agencies, and others to the table to try to really work on some of these issues where we know people will be needing support, and to ensure that we're not only assisting those who are coming in, but that we're also supporting the communities where they're going. Refugee resettlement has always been a public-private partnership, and we've always recognized that in order to do it well, we need to make sure that the people who live in these communities where refugees arrive have an understanding and know who to go to if there are problems that crop up, because with any situation with human beings, there are issues that come up, and that we build relationships that are really positive, that help those coming in, whether they're refugees or evacuees, build social capital, connect not only to people in their own community, but to others of all different backgrounds who are already in the community so that they come to really feel integrated and call their new community home. So we continue to work through that unified command group, and we've already opened up a lot of really great resources through that. We are just now starting to get a big increase in the number of people who are coming in. So the next few weeks and months will be pretty intense, but we're feeling as good as we can, knowing that there are still a lot of unknowns in terms of the resources that we've been able to pull together, and also the communication channels that have been established, which are almost as important as having resources lined up. As I mentioned, the needs, short-term housing, cash assistance. We originally did not have Afghan evacuees eligible for much of anything. With their status as humanitarian parolees, they did not qualify for resettlement services. They did not qualify for public benefits. Most don't need it for long. More than 90% of the people we resettle go to work within 180 days of arriving, and they are quickly self-sufficient. But public benefits do play an important role for a short period of time while people get on their feet. We also know that we'll need help for physical and mental health needs, especially given the crisis and the emergency situation that people evacuated from. The level of trauma that we see is much greater than what we typically see among the Afghan population, just as you might expect from seeing the scenes unfold on the news. Food assistance, we know, is always a big need. We do believe that people will qualify for SNAP with some changes in the federal eligibility guidelines that came with the continuing resolution that was signed into law by President Biden on September 30th. But we know that there are also a lot of needs for culturally appropriate foods, so we've been working with some partners on that and have some really great resources pulled together. Staffing for services is going to be a huge need, including those who speak Dari and Pashto, which are the predominant languages that the population is being resettled, noting that many of the people who are coming speak beautiful English better than I do, and really are in a position to be interpreters for others. And then lastly, immigration legal services. As I mentioned, this humanitarian parole status is a 2-year provisional status. So once that 2 years passes, people can reapply to extend their humanitarian parole, but most people are going to want to have a path to be a lawful permanent resident or a citizen. So the mechanism they'll have to do that is through asylum. And asylum, if you're at all familiar with it, is not an easy process. Ideally, people have legal representation and they need some specialized supports. Longer term needs, definitely long-term housing. I think, that the need to find something that's affordable or as close to it is something that we all share. clothing, employment, and transportation. Those are all big areas where we will be working. A lot of people who come in will have professional backgrounds. They'll have built careers in Afghanistan. They will be very experienced. They will face barriers to getting back into their careers in many cases, although we're working with some industry and sector partners to open up those pathways and make it a little bit easier for people to transfer their skills and their qualifications. We know that we'll have to work with people on meeting their short-term need for financial survival and balancing that with longer-term career aspirations. So a couple of things I mentioned in the continuing resolution package that was passed and signed into law by President Biden. Afghans are authorized to receive refugee resettlement benefits. That's huge. We've been on calls, and I know Rupa has been on some of those calls with us, trying to figure out how we fill in the gaps in absence of eligibility for those federally funded services and support. So we're really grateful that we don't need to focus as much on that now. They are eligible for a driver's license or state ID card. They also will receive expedited consideration of asylum if they apply for it. We're not quite sure how the mechanics of that will work, but we've been told that it is in progress. There is some supplemental emergency funding to support the evacuation, the processing. It's a massive operation to have tens of thousands of people at these safe havens, and also to ensure that there are still pathways for those most at risk to get out and find safety. And then an increase in the cash assistance that's allotted for refugees coming in. With the sheer growth in the numbers, there's a need for more funding to be allocated for those line items. It's a very limited time when people receive cash assistance. It's up to 8 months, but once people enter employment, it tapers off because it's income-based in terms of eligibility. For our federal advocacy priorities, we're working on a couple of things, as I mentioned, that imperfect situation where we're grateful that people are safe, but they have a provisional status, and asylum not being the best way to pursue a legal status. We are working with Congress on the bipartisan Afghan Adjustment Act. So if any of you remember the Mariel boat lift with the Cubans who came in, the Cuban Adjustment Act allowed them to adjust status through a pathway that was not the asylum system, and that's what we're hoping to achieve for Afghans as well. We're also looking to create a designated humanitarian parole program. So this is not for those who are already here, but for Afghans who are already in our community who are separated from loved ones. One of the biggest needs, and I'm sure you've gotten calls from your constituents who are separated from their mother, their sister, the people they're gravely concerned for, and they have no good way to be reunited with them, especially if they're still in Afghanistan. We're hoping to create some pathways for those families to be together again. We also have a Priority 2 program, which is a group of special humanitarian concern to the United States that has been defined for people who are journalists, who have worked for U.S. non-governmental organizations, who have worked under U.S. government contracts, who didn't necessarily qualify for special immigrant visa status. So if you think about another circle out in terms of supporting U.S. objectives and goals in Afghanistan, but not necessarily the U.S. mission. There are ways for them to access protection here in the United States, but it is very, very challenging, and people have to be outside of Afghanistan. It's very hard to get out of Afghanistan safely right now. And then lastly, we would like to have all fees waived for people to adjust their status and ensure that there is funding to support their immigration legal service needs. There is really no latent capacity in our communities for immigration legal services, as you may be aware. All of us as legal service providers, my organization is one, are really stretched pretty thin on that front. So Resettlement Services, I'll be brief on this. We provide a lot of case management services, from welcoming people at the airport and arranging their housing to doing general safety orientation, helping them understand the community. Where do you grocery shop? How do you access the bus? Where is your local healthcare provider? Getting children enrolled in school, helping ensure that those who don't speak English are connected to English as a second language classes, identifying vocational training opportunities, developing jobs, supporting employers who employ refugees and evacuees, and then helping people work toward those long-term goals. We also make sure everybody gets their health screening, their immunizations, has a medical home. If there are any mental health needs, we work to address those. We provide financial literacy classes. We do coaching. We help people set goals and figure out how they can be financially well. And if they get into trouble, we help them with financial counseling so they can get back on track We also do lending for credit and asset building so that people can build a healthy credit score and build wealth over time. And then we provide a lot of other supports for integration. So if you think about, specialized needs for women who are often isolated, for children who need specialized supports in their roles as their families acculturate and adjust to life in the United States. Mentorship programs so people actually get connected outside of their own cultural, religious, linguistic communities. And with that, I would say that we view the city of Northglenn, all of the cities where we work, our county partners, our state partners, the community members who are here as really vital partners. So we're grateful for the opportunity. I say we, like I have my whole staff behind me. But speaking on behalf of all 3 resettlement agencies and my entire team, we're really grateful for the chance to come and present here tonight. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have and looking forward to working in partnership with you all.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you. This was an incredible presentation, and the first thing I thought of was how can we share this information more broadly? I'd like to think that there's 500 people watching this meeting, and there's a fraction of that. Yeah, there's a fraction of that, but it's so important. And so is it appropriate, Heather, to somehow share this information?
Absolutely.
More
I can
publicly?
talk with staff tomorrow, and we'll work with Jennifer and come up with some strategies and how we can better employ our communication channels, so our connection newsletter, and then maybe a video. We can come up with a lot of different ways and make it continual. So,
Because as council, we have received, communication that was extremely uninformed. And uninformed can be scary.
It can.
Because they take us down a path that's really not true.
Right.
And when that message spreads, it's really toxic, and it makes me sad. So this information was just so thorough. And thank you for your work. I had some time at the Islamic Center on Saturday, and everything that you're talking about here, the partnership with 9 Health was there and doing flu shots and COVID shots and really wrapping around that community with services and support. It was beautiful.
It's amazing.
But I know that you're a big part of that too, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. Please feel free to reach out. I'll look forward to working with you on ways to spread the word further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Joanna, has anyone signed up to speak to council tonight?
We do have one resident who signed up in person. Her name is Bonnie Bell, excuse me.
Excellent.
I actually spoke with Bonnie. She was bringing forward some concerns related to code enforcement, and Brooke and I are going to assist her. So I believe she left.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Bonnie, for being here.
In addition, I do have a voicemail from resident Mark Bromley that I'll play.
Thank you, City Council. This is your favorite resident, Mark Bromley from Northglenn. Northglenn is my family, and it's good to be in Northglenn. Nice to have seen the new opening for the community center and lots of people taking interest in the grand opening. I was kind of expecting to be impressed, but wasn't. Would have liked a better fireworks show, and with me on the council, we'll have to do better next 4th of July. Good to see recognition for Breast Cancer Awareness Month and that all genders are covered under the proclamation. I'm proud we recognized the Italian Heritage Month in Colorado, as that was the intention of Columbus Day, which is celebrated in all the Americas and nationally in the USA. I think it would be better if we stick to accepted history rather than convoluted history alternatives, for our diverse communities deserve proper respect for their accomplishments. Thank you for acknowledging our law enforcement community and respecting the sacrifice and commitment and honor of our police. I was witness to the events of E.B. Raines Jr.'s service to our community and the events that took place. Back then, Northglenn had a very fine law enforcement community that gave the highest quality of service Northglenn residents could ever respect and should have again. I would prefer more law enforcement funding and support. Afghan Refugee Overview. I see Colorado is going to have an estimated 2,000 refugees from Afghanistan resettled in Colorado. Up to 400 of these Afghan refugees could be here in Northglenn. I am interested in knowing more and trying to grasp how the refugees will have access instantly to required resources when our homeless veterans, homeless U.S. citizens, and economically excluded, discriminated U.S. citizens and disadvantaged U.S. residents are not getting similar access to charitable benefits along with housing. I know Thornton and Denver and 2 others are providing some solutions, yet Northglenn is small in comparison to other cities, and our job market is not as viable and has not been stabilized. And I worry about unfair job market competition that could cause displacement of U.S. citizens from housing, incomes, and further negative impacts after the COVID employment and business crisis of 2020-2021 as a result. What a mess. If only Joe Biden wasn't so dysfunctional in his mishandling of the Afghanistan withdrawal, much of this humanitarian catastrophe could have been avoided. CR 108, DOLA IHOP rezoning of single-family residential areas. I do oppose this measure as it is not congruent with the purpose of the city of Northglenn. And with such limited lands and resources to our disposal, our voters should have ultimate decision in this process. During last week's study session, the council intended to remove the right of the voters from this process. Having been a long-term resident, we have plenty of multi-family zones, more than many local municipalities already have. Thornton and Westminster are building more single-family properties of luxurious means. I do not think it is wise to rezone any single-family properties in Northglenn at this time, as it is a direct conflict of interest to many residents who located to Northglenn for the community offered. On the budget, I do oppose the CRU, as I believe it is a costly and ineffective reform and throwback to the past of mental institutionalization, where people were incorrectly diagnosed and falsely incarcerated in healthcare facilities without due process, which President Kennedy then closed down. I feel these jobs of the CRU could be given to qualified police officers and would be more efficient. CR 112, denial of application by Discrete Greens. I find the council was in error in denying the business license to Discrete Greens when they had filed in compliance to all city requirements. I believe there was a mistake, and according to my research, there is in that immediate area no services of this kind surrounding Northglenn. Competitive markets are always good for business, and I feel Discrete Greens was denied their application for personal rather than professional reasons. We as a city have more than enough restricted item shops operating in one city block. We even have 3 convenience stores located side by side. Competition is the nature of business in Northglenn, and Discrete Greens should have been treated more fairly in their business proposal to the city. They did do as an exceptional amount of work in compliance with the city. That was above and beyond any legalized business entity. I believe Discrete Greens deserves reconsideration and a second hearing. Opens the market to competitive pricing the U.S. American way. Thank you, City Council, for taking the time to consider my views. This is your favorite resident and lifelong resident, Mark Bromley from Northglenn, signing off.
Is there anyone in the audience who didn't have a chance to sign up but would like to speak to council? All right, we're going to move into communications, starting with Ward 1, Councilmember Wikovich. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Just one thing to mention. My husband and I attended the VIP event last Wednesday, and it was a wonderful evening. Thank you, Amanda, and your entire team and everybody involved, because I was really proud to be part of it, and it was a great evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Downing.
Thank you. I also attended the Wednesday night event, and it was awesome. And thank you, staff. I mean, we couldn't do it without them. It was wonderful. And actually, we did stop by the next couple of days just to kind of be part of that a little bit. And I heard nothing but accolades. So good job and congratulations to the City of Northglenn for having this. It's wonderful.
Councilmember Gott.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of things, but it's been a while, so I'm going to stretch my brain. September 28th, the DICE board participated in the youth listening tour, and I was very impressed with the youth of our community who were involved and participated in that, gave us some good feedback that we'll be thinking about, and they also asked to be able to do something like this again, so we will be trying to work with the Northglenn Youth Commission in the future over similar topics. And then the next day on September 29th was a meeting for the CC4CA, and we're just basically refining some of the our policy statements from last year. There isn't any legislation really to be looking at right now. Trying to figure out how to maybe have some input at the federal level, or at least give information to our federal representatives and senators. Also, I did attend the Wednesday night event, and then I was there Friday and Saturday, and the new rec center is very beautiful. The theater was wonderful. I could the concert we had with the Denver whatever band, I can't remember the name. But anyway, that was good. And yes, I was amazingly crowded on Saturday. To hear that there was almost 3,000 people, it's astonishing. And everything I heard was really good. I mean, I guess people can always find something to complain about, but this is so much of an improvement over our older building that was needing a lot of repair and updates. And everyone just seemed to be having a great time. So I'm glad we were able to do that. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Lukman-Hiramasa.
Thank you, Mayor. I also attended the VIP ribbon cutting event, and it was absolutely one of the highlights of my week. My husband and I both had a great time. It was lovely. It's a beautiful facility. The entertainment was great, and the poet almost made me cry. He was so good. He was just a great speaker. So that was lovely. I stopped by Saturday as well, and it was amazing to see how many people were there. It was incredible. And really made me feel good. Everybody was having a great time and participating, so it's good to see that our residents are enjoying that new facility. Other than that, I did attend the No Need for Speed session regarding Niver Street on September 29th, and it was a great turnout, almost 20 residents, I believe, so it's really great to see the community getting involved and participating in the No Need for Speed program. I also attended a couple of the subcommittee meetings for the CCPP board for the body-worn camera and the community event subcommittee. And tomorrow they will be working on their work plan, so public is invited to attend that meeting if they would like and find out more information on what's going on there. Then also I attended the welcoming for the refugees at the, let me see if I'm saying this right, the Metropolitan Denver North Islamic Center. And I got my flu shot. It was really great, a lot of families there. And our police department was really wonderful. There were a lot of kids playing with them, and they were so good. I heard a couple of the kids saying, I want to be a police officer, and also a cookie maker. So it was really cute. It was great. I had a great time. And that's it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, do you want to, Becky?
Oh, we can do Councilmember Brown next? Sure.
You could go first, Mayor Pro Tem, if you
Okay.
really want. Yeah. go
Sorry, you
ahead.
coughed, and I was reminded that you were on screen, and I apologize that we missed you. All right, so I'll start first with the Legislative Committee. We did meet this evening, reviewed the legislative protocols, taking a lot of the feedback that we heard at our last meeting and trying to get that integrated. And I believe that that'll be coming back before council next Monday evening. Additionally, we started reviewing the legislative issues guide for next session. If any of you have any edits or some particular issue that you want to see reflected in that guide, now is definitely the time to let the committee know. So feel free to reach out to one of the committee members. Additionally, you can always reach out to Heather or Rupa and share your feedback there. And then finally, we started working on the annual legislative dinner and hope to have some next steps to share after our next meeting there. So lots in process with the legislative committee. And then on And then as far as my communications update, a couple of items here. It felt like the last week in September was really busy, and then last week was really busy as well. So it's an exciting time to be doing our work here in Northglenn. But on September 28th, I joined the my first meeting with the Sustainability Committee. And I have to say that I was really impressed with the leadership, Jen and Renata, that you all heard from last week, and their vision for how they're organizing the committee and moving ahead with the work. And then the next day, on the 29th, I participated in the Excel Partners in Energy EV Readiness Plan. And this first session was really kind of getting our head around what some goals could be and how ambitious the group wants to be. On September 30th, I testified at a Colorado Department of Transportation listening session. They're continuing to do their work of figuring out how they're going to reduce carbon emissions from the transportation sector. And that is a process that's ongoing at this point. On October 1st, Councilmember Bookman Hiramasa and I took a walk around Crook Reservoir with City Manager Geyer, as well as Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, Amanda Peterson, to show off some of the areas that we were looking for improvements on, and to just generally share some feedback around Crook Reservoir. So thank you to Heather and Amanda for taking a walk with us that first morning. And then finally, I also attended the Recreation Center opening last Wednesday, and walking up to the rec center, I just felt like so proud, right, of this new facility that we've all collectively been thinking and talking about for years, and to see it there and built and open and people in there was just, it was a little surreal. Sorry, I'm getting a little choked up. But I really want to congratulate staff. You all crushed that event. It was so phenomenal. Absolutely showed off that space so well and was such a great celebration. Everybody that I've been talking to can't stop raving about how amazing that new facility is and how special it's going to be for our community for years to come. So thank you to staff, as well as the rest of the council, for your leadership in making this facility a reality for our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Brown?
Well, I just wanted to say that I also attended the Wednesday night event, and I was actually so proud of the work that this entire council did, along with staff, that I told Councilmember Downing, that I was shaking. My legs were shaking. My body was shaking because I was so excited to see how beautiful it was when it was finished, to see the art in the main lobby. It was just wonderful. I had to leave town on, one of my emergency trips to California, so I didn't get to attend any of the other events, but I did send my spy up there yesterday, my grandson, and he has raved about it since he got back. He absolutely loved it, and we're going to have a date and go back up there, but he adored it. He's thrilled to death with his beach towel. I also wanted to share that I actually had somebody sharing the fireworks that happened Saturday night, and I was amazed by them. I was a little shocked by the one resident who had said it wasn't enough. I felt they were phenomenal, and to have somebody share it with me while it was happening was really cool. You know, if I couldn't be there, that's the next best thing that I could ask for. I just feel like everybody, the staff was amazing. Amanda, I bow to her, and Eric and everyone else that participated with it. I can't imagine the work that went into creating such a beautiful facility for our city. So I'm just very appreciative of the work that you've done, Heather, and the work that your team has done to make our city a real stop, a real stop. I think that residents from Broomfield and Thornton and Westminster are all going to be coming over to enjoy our facility, and that's going to be great. Thank you, Meredith, for not forgetting about me at the end.
No, I was just doing in-person people and then our remote.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't walk right now, so you got to do me virtually.
All right. Well, thank you. I have just a few things. First of all, as an Italian American myself, I was super excited to celebrate with some of our residents in that same way. I don't personally connect that celebration to Columbus Day. I believe in Colorado we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And so that would be just a clarification there. The rec center events, again, I don't know if we could stand on the roof and shout how amazing our city staff is, if that would even be enough. It was incredible, and we know that it was a long week. But everyone was incredible. I mean, down to all the volunteers. I mean, it was such a well-organized event. First of all, the VIP event was fancy. I mean, anybody you talk to, they were all completely blown away by the attention given to every last detail. And it just really felt like a special evening. But we know how much planning went into that, and so thank you for that. And the rec center is more than impressive. Again, it's just gorgeous. And the event on Saturday was filled with joy. There were so many residents in and out, just all over the festival grounds, is that what we call them? And the bands were great, and I mean, that was another day that was meticulously planned, and everybody was digging in and helping out. It was incredible. Not only, well, I talked to hundreds probably of blissfully happy residents. I mean, from the smallest ones swimming in the pool to, you know, the tallest ones playing basketball. It was just really fun, and I thought the fireworks were great. I was able to capture a photo that I shared on my mayor's page that I thought was just beautiful. It was the memorial, the Veterans Memorial with the flag and the fireworks behind it. It was beautiful. I mean, there was just so much joy. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Before I did that on Saturday, though, I did go, I saw Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa over at the Islamic Center, and that ties so well with the presentation tonight, meeting those families, engaging with those kids. They were all over the place. One kept showing me how fast he could run. He was like, watch, I can run fast. But there was just, they felt very welcome and cared for. And the 9 Health people were there doing the flu shots and the COVID vaccines. And so I did take part in that. I always get my flu shot. I do work with a vulnerable population, so I was eligible to get my booster. And that was definitely something I wanted to do. Still waiting for our smallest friends to be eligible for the vaccine themselves. So while I spend every day with over 200 of unvaccinated children, I wanted to make sure I kept them safe and did my part. Other things that really felt they fell in the shadow of our rec center stuff. I had a Metro Mayor's Caucus meeting. I had an RTD meeting, but they weren't nearly as fun or nearly as important as our rec center and theater and senior center opening. So thank you again. City Manager Geyer, what do you have tonight?
Thank you for all the wonderful feedback about staff and the efforts in opening the new recreation center. I know they really appreciate those kind, thoughtful words. So thank you for your participation. And I would just add, the twisty slide is super fun. So I highly recommend the twisty slide.
Absolutely.
For kids of all ages.
All ages.
That's all I have.
You have to be 45 inches or taller, but. Joanna, how are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you. I just have a quick election update tonight. Ballots were sent out by the county clerk and recorder's office last Friday, October 8th. The 24-hour ballot drop-off box here at City Hall is now open. It is a very convenient and secure way for everybody to return their ballots, so please take advantage of that. Folks can still register to vote. to receive a ballot, even though the first wave of ballots have been sent out. And I did want to mention that people who don't have permanent housing may register to vote. So if there are residents who have new or different situations this time, are curious about whether they're eligible or not to register to vote and vote in this election, there are numerous FAQ lists available on the Secretary of State's website. So I'd encourage people to take a look at those. If you don't have internet access, feel free to stop by the city clerk's office, give us a call, come in person, and we can help get that information to you. And then just a quick reminder that the candidate forum that will be hosted by the Rotary Club of Northglenn and Thornton will be held this Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. at the new Parsons Theater in the new recreation facility located just west of City Hall at 1 Memorial Parkway. So please take advantage of that resource as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney Hoffman, how are you?
I am doing great. Good evening. And I just wanted to say I too was honored to be at the event on Wednesday night. And when I heard the chronology of events, I realized that when the process started, I had a lot more hair, and I think it was a completely different color. And then I was completely inspired as well by the poet laureate from the state. That was just, I left completely inspired by all of the events and culminating with his poem and his introduction to his poem. So I thought it was pretty amazing. That's all I've got.
Financial report, August 2021 update. Mr. Loveland, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me tonight. As the mayor mentioned, the August 2021 interim financial report. We're going to talk about a lot of numbers tonight, so I'm going to go through this a little quicker than we normally do. We're crossing a lot of years, and it just gets confusing. So, but I will start off with an update on sales and use tax as normal. Sales and use tax are up just under 25% year over year. Looking back to 2019, up, excuse me, over 14%. Those are large increases, something that we don't normally see. A year coming from the pandemic, we could kind of expect to see large increase, but even going back to 2019, a 14% increase is quite large. Driving, a lot of that number is auto use tax up just under 43%, food tax is up 4%, and then marijuana tax is up 7.5%. I will touch on the general fund first. As you can see on page 2 of the report, total taxes are up about 27%. A big portion of that we've talked about one-time revenues in building material use tax and then use tax at Carl's Farm. Other revenues that you'll see changes in intergovernmental revenues. That's due to the CARES, it's short this year due to CARES Act funding in the prior year. Charges for services, those were plan review fees for Carl's Farm. There's a couple of themes that we'll hear throughout the entire presentation. CARES Act and Carl's Farm driving a lot of these numbers. Overall, to include the sales tax, revenues and expenditures overall are performing how we had planned for the year. So total revenues in the general fund are at $19.8 million, up 17% versus last year. And then on the expenditure side of things, expenditures by department on page 3, the total expenditures are up 1%, totaling $17 million. A couple of the variables there, again, driven by the CARES Act funding that was being spent either in the legislative department or in the other financing uses row there towards the bottom. We won't dwell on the general fund expenditures. Their total spending rate is at 63% right now. We're 2/3 of the way through the year. That spending rate is expected for the year. In the water fund, On page 4, total revenues of $9.2 million with expenditures of $4.5. A couple of highlights here. Water charges are up $1.2 million. Carl's Farm tap fees are driving that number. And then in addition, the water resource revenues up over 30%. And that's the taxes, again, driven by one-time building material use taxes. Otherwise, on the expenditure side of things, the capital outlay line, that one is just lagging behind. There's projects, in the hopper that are moving forward just through August. Those haven't been spent, but operationally, the water fund is performing well. In that blue box at the bottom, we have a specific breakout for water usage. Down 10%, and that's largely been driven by consumption being down over 7% versus last year. In the wastewater funds, total revenues of $4.1 million and total expenditures of $11.8. You'll see that capital outlay line of $9.9 million, lift station and force main project that's underway and moving along. Above that, in the revenue, wastewater charges, those are up by about $548,000. $422,000 of that is tap fees related to Carl's Farm. And then the contributions line, not a normal line that we see, but the contribution from the developer of Carl's Farm for the Bunker Hill lift station is what makes up that $700,000 there. In the stormwater fund, you'll see that stormwater charges are up 25%. $62,000 of that is related to Carl's Farm. And then expenditures and other revenues in that line, or in that fund, are behaving as expected. Then on page 7, the last fund we'll talk about tonight, the Sanitation Fund. Total revenues of $1.2 million and expenditures of $921,000. Again, I think last month when I reported, we're seeing an uptick in our special pickups of around $12,000, and then recycling commodity charges have actually flipped and are now paying dividends on the revenue side for the city. Moving along on page 8, the cash and investments report. At the end of August, we had $95.8 million that are in the city's name. The next chart, I will look at these charts. On 9, you'll see the chart that shows our biggest contributor as far as geographic area in the city, which is the marketplace. You'll see from March through July, the light blue bar in the bar graph, you'll be able to see just kind of the growth that we've seen 1 year over year. But the chart goes back to 2017, just for these purposes, but the marketplace revenue is, outperforming pretty much every year of the past 5. So definitely positive things to see there. The next chart on the sales tax history chart, the same thing, the light green bar, March through July, outperforming historic revenue numbers here in the city. And then on page 11, this will be the last page that I touch on unless there's questions. Tax collected by geographic code, you can see, again, year over year, 20 to 21, the change over 20% within the city geographic codes. If we go back 2 years, we're up 3.7%, so not as much growth within the city boundaries in these geographic codes as we're seeing overall in sales and use tax. A lot of that's online sales being delivered to homes that aren't captured in the geographic code reports. But a lot of that is driving that 24% or 25% increase that we're seeing. So that is what I have for August. If there's any questions, happy to answer those.
Looking to my favorite budget, Councilmember Brown, making sure she doesn't have any questions.
Hi, Jason, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
We'll talk more about
Just
numbers in a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, moving into the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
Please open the vote.
Oh, no, I just raised my hand, huh?
Councilmember Brown, I can ask you what you would like your vote cast as, and you can just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
All right, we have 2 public hearings tonight. The first one is the proposed 2022 annual operating and capital improvement budget. City Manager Guyer will provide a presentation prior to the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. So you're going to hear a thorough, detailed presentation this evening that looks familiar for you. And we are going to be tag teaming this, Jason, Loveland, and I. The purpose of providing this thorough presentation is to meet our requirements per the city charter to provide a public hearing. And so some of it may be redundant, but it's also an opportunity to get you up to speed on what changes we've made along the way. So tonight's purpose is to provide an update to you and members of the community on council's direction, questions, and additions to the proposed 2022 budget. We're also going to highlight how the council's vision and goals are connected to the funding that's allocated in the proposed budget. We're also going to provide an overview of revenues and expenditures that are programmed into the budget. Also provide additional information on proposed personnel, staffing requests that are being requested. We're going to provide an overview of the capital improvement program, also referred to as CIP, long-term debt obligations, and then provide an additional opportunity for members of the public as well as yourselves to provide staff with additional feedback. So we've held 2 prior presentations with City Council on the proposed budget. Those were held on September 13th as well as September 20th. So tonight's presentation is a culmination and reflection of the feedback that we've heard thus far. We've heard direction from council to increase the residential street program funding, so that has been done, and you see the additional $2 million in funding reflected in the CIP budget numbers. You've also provided direction to invest in electric and hybrid vehicles, and we provided greater detail on that in our last presentation, but right now what we have programmed in the budget includes 4 EV vehicles and 7 hybrid vehicles. There have been some questions that I've received around the backbone infrastructure related to the power to provide support to these vehicles, and we do have a sufficient plan for the 2022 year. However, as we really dive into the EV readiness plan, staff is doing some work around preparing for what would be to come in 2023. So you can expect that we'll be coming forward with an ask in the 2023 budget that I refer to as more of the backbone infrastructure that we need to support additional EV vehicles in future years. Some of the questions that we've received from council have been focused on parks maintenance staffing. Amanda Peterson, our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture, is here tonight, and there's several slides that she's included in this PowerPoint presentation to really expand on the questions that we've received regarding the 3 parks maintenance worker staffing requests that we have proposed in the budget. There was also a question about whether or not council needs to allocate additional funding for traffic calming, school zone improvements. And certainly this is something we can discuss more. We do have a presentation on school zone improvements and what's planned in the next year ahead. For next Monday, that got shifted a couple meetings based on some things that we had to do some additional work on, but certainly that's a discussion we can have. I can tell you that the money we have in the proposed budget is sufficient for what we've got going on right now, but we have so many studies in the process that we can also have additional conversation as we move into 2022, and council can make, we can bring forward requests if we need additional funding. So staff's not making any recommendation to council to increase that $250,000 amount at this point, but that's something on our radar screen that we can continue to have conversation about. And then this is somewhat redundant, but there were questions about utilizing additional fund balance to increase our investment in roadway maintenance. And staff does recommend and support the in total $3 million in funding for our residential street program next year. And we don't necessarily recommend increasing it any more than that based on so many of the things we have going on in the city. So overall, our 2022 budget position is healthy and strong. We have a balanced budget with the use of reserves as well as balanced special fund budgets. This budget really aligns resources with, I think, is a desired level of service by City Council and our residents. This budget is really a forward-thinking budget that is different than past budgets where we haven't had the available resources that we have today. And so you see more of intentional strategic growth taking place through the recommendations you see us bringing forward as staff. And not only do we go into this budget with a short-term mindset, we also go into this budget with a long-term mindset. And Jason has a few slides where he'll show the long-term out-year projections for your reference. As I've shared in the past, council plays an instrumental role in shaping the budget process. You all, in your official elected capacities, set the tone for what's to come in the year ahead through this process that we're going through, and ultimately which culminates in the adoption of the budget scheduled for October 25th. The strategic plan that was initiated in 2019 and carries us through 2023, which is updated on an annual basis, does really set that foundation. And I have another slide that will outline the additional 8 strategic priorities that council made a priority earlier this year as a result of the February strategic planning process. One of the requests that I made of directors this year was to really ask for what they need in order to meet the council's desired level of service. And so that includes addressing any life cycle maintenance costs, deferred maintenance. And so we believe we put together a really strong budget for your consideration, and thanks for your feedback thus far in strengthening the budget document. For the community's benefit, this is the council's 2019 to 2023 vision statement. That's the foundation of the strategic plan. And this statement is, Northglenn is a diverse and welcoming community that celebrates its small town character, urban energy, and thriving businesses. You have 8 strategic priorities that frame the strategic plan, and those include high performance government, community engagement, public safety, business retention and growth, housing opportunities, diverse community, sustainability, and infrastructure. Jason will share in a few moments some of the numbers connected to that new spending that you'll see that directly correlates to these 8 strategic priorities. Within the proposed budget, you'll see here we've got 8 of the strategic priorities new in 2021 that council asked staff to move forward with. The restorative justice program is underway with the work that's being done around the crisis response unit. The police co-responder program, also renamed to crisis response unit, that work is underway. We're also making progress with the work around the Village Greens fencing, and there was a name change there, so we're just including that to make sure we keep track of it. Council had discussion in July about Webster Lake safety concerns, and so there's funding included in the budget to conduct a crime prevention through environmental design assessment for not only Webster Lake, E.B. Rains Park, but also we've added Croak Reservoir and really this whole Civic campus area to include the tunnel to the west of us. So we'll be looking at this whole area very comprehensively in the year ahead. Pedestrian and roadway safety continues to be a priority of council, and so this is one of the items that we have yet to bring back to you, specifically the Pedestrian Safety Subcommittee, and I hope to do that this fall. The Endline Fair Equity Regional Initiative for the public's benefit is an initiative that RTD is moving forward. We expect that to be an 18-month process, but we'll continue to keep the community up to date when updates are available and there's more information to share on that effort. The Boys and Girls Club, that was an idea that came out of the strategic planning process at the time. The city of Thornton was in conversation with Boys and Girls Club, and my understanding is they're no longer moving forward with that idea, but we'll continue to keep it on our radar screen. If it's something, a new opportunity that we can evaluate in the future, we'll certainly bring that back to council for consideration. The adventure course targeting ages 12 plus is being wrapped into the Justice Center West Park planning process. So that's the status of these 8 council priorities for 2021. A real quick review of what's on the horizon. There's so much great work being done. We will be having a conversation on October 25th about snow removal and really overall accessibility. So that is one of those study sessions that I had to shift around for agenda management purposes, but that will be coming to you on October 25th. And the waste optimization study, I also needed to shift that, so that was coming to you a little bit sooner, but that'll be pushed into later this fall. The electric vehicle readiness study, there have been questions around that, and that'll be coming back to council in Q1 or Q2 of 2022. The progress on phase 2, what we're calling phase 2 of the Civic Center project, which is the design and construction of the new city hall and our partnership with Continuum Partners. That work is moving forward. Jason talked a little bit about the revenues and the strong financial position and movement forward of the Northglenn Marketplace. I know you all get questions about the Northglenn Marketplace when you're out and about at ward meetings. We are seeing increased tenants at the marketplace. Debbie Tuttle, our Economic Development Director, has been doing amazing work and working with HCP. There is some movement in terms of replacing what was going to be the Harkins Theater. And we're not in a position to announce what that looks like yet, but some exciting work being done behind the scenes with a food and beverage company. In addition to that, we have Painted Tree, Didi's, and Five Below coming online. So I know sometimes when you, as a resident, if you drive by the marketplace and you see some vacant storefronts, we're continuing to do as much as we can to work with HCP, in particular Debbie, to really attract new tenants and really create greater vitality at that marketplace. The racial equity toolkit work we hope to begin in the fall of 2022. We are working with CPS HR, a company out of California, that's going to be conducting our staff training soon. We're going to be engaging in some focus groups, and within the middle of November, we have a presentation of the survey that was conducted internally with staff to report out on that and then hold some focus groups with staff. So we'll be bringing that back around to council, and that'll really feed into the development of a racial equity tool as well. The opioid settlement funding, we haven't had a whole lot of discussion about this, but this is going to be coming to you on October 25th. And then the transportation long-range planning efforts, formerly referred to as the long-range transportation plan. That's one area within the current strategic plan that we've pushed out a bit because there's so much work underway with traffic signal upgrades, investment in our residential street program, that we can wait a couple years before we need to make that a high priority. And then there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of work, good work being done around homelessness initiatives and providing resources to individuals within our community experiencing homelessness. I do have a meeting, Roop and I will be meeting with Adams County on Wednesday. We received direction from City Council to go ahead and start exploring what a possible navigation day center could look like. And so that meeting will take place on Wednesday, and I'll report back to City Council on the progress we make there. Now, at the last City Council meeting on October 4th, there was discussion around sustainability efforts, so I wanted to include this slide to really capture what I understand that discussion to be. Brooke was acting city manager at the time, so please know if we haven't captured that discussion fully. You did support tonight the housing grant match funding, the housing grant program that we'll be participating in, and we'll bring forward that grant match at a future council meeting. I know it was asked what our current sustainability budget is for 2021, and that program amount is $25,000, and that's been enabling us to do different efforts here and there throughout the year. Development of a program budget, a more robust program budget to reflect the desires of the Sustainability Committee, which is well underway based on Mayor Pro Tem's earlier comments. We're hoping to really develop that in the year ahead. Brooke had mentioned to me that there was a question about staffing, and right now Becky Smith, our planning manager, dedicates a significant portion of her time, but we are limited in our capacity at a staffing level. We don't have a fully dedicated staff member to our sustainability program, so that's something that right now I have it programmed in the 5-year staffing plan to be something that I bring forward in the 2024 plan. If revenues are strong as we go into 2023 budget process, that's something I could certainly bring forward sooner. So that's 5-year staffing plan is really meant to be a time horizon, and as revenues and funds are available, we can shift things based on the priorities of City Council. I do want to acknowledge that I believe there was a question about a climate action plan. That's not something that's currently in this proposed 2022 budget. Funding in the amount of $100,000 to $150,000 would be needed for that type of plan. So that's something that, if council's interested, you would need to bring forward through this budget process or at a later date, and could be use of one-time general fund reserve dollars. So the budget is a big process. There's a lot of numbers. Jason's going to dive into those shortly, but it's really important for us to really emphasize how our residents benefiting from our annual budget process. There's a continued focus on providing a high quality of life and excellent customer service. So the budget really captures all the resources needed to keep the city running on a day-to-day basis. I think in this budget, compared to past budget processes, we're really making an effort to address tough problems through creative solutions. So you'll see this through the crisis response unit, the EB range junior park safety, additional staffing requests that we're making, the SEPTED assessments that I mentioned earlier, and truly being responsive to the desire of council to implement an increased level of service. And so you see this through the funding that we have included in the CIP for the traffic calming program with crew, the residential street program as a whole. That's a significant step forward for our community. The funding allocated for diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, our next level data-driven policing, which we just continue to build on the efforts that we've made as a result of the 360 assessment that was presented to council last year, and the staffing additions that Chief May has requested. And then Parks Visioning next year. This is going to be a significant opportunity for the city to engage with residents on what do you want the next decade of your park system to look like. And so we'll be talking more about that as we get into 2022. And then the work around special events. We do an amazing job, our staff does, our special events staff, with special events. And we've heard that residents really like the hyper-local events that we brought forward through our COVID-19 response. And so the staffing request and then the increased funding that is included in this budget really helps support that vision and keeping those events alive. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Jason for the numbers portion. But
Well, we have quite a few questions, so
Sure.
maybe stay there
Okay.
for now. We'll start with Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's just really like a little detail question. We've heard about the N-Line 18-month study, but what month are they in for doing that? I mean, it seems like we've heard about it for several months, so I just was curious. If you know.
That's a good question. I want to say we're 4 to 5 months in it, but let me double check on that with Deborah Johnson, their GM, and get more of a status update.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolford?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Heather, I wanted to go back to the on the horizon slide around the sustainability efforts. I'm not entirely sure how to ask this, but I would be really interested in council's, council, just kind of getting a temperature check from council if folks would be interested in using one-time funds to cover the cost of building out a climate action plan, especially given that the sustainability plan the Sustainability Committee has identified this as one of their 2022 goals. I think it's going to be really hard for the committee to achieve that goal without funding that enables them to hire a consultant to run and move ahead with that piece. So I'm just curious, I don't know how you want to go about asking that question, Madam Mayor, but it was something that I wanted to bring up for folks.
Councilmember Brown?
Could you tell my lips were moving? Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, but at the beginning, you kind of got muffled by your mask. So can you repeat what your ask is?
Yeah, so I wanted to check in with council to see if there was an appetite for funding the sustainability plan, the climate action plan that the Sustainability Committee has identified as one of their 2022 goals.
Okay. Do you want my perspective?
Sure.
I don't think we should budget it at 100 to 150,000. Where did that number come from? What backs that up? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've actually been in contact with the Brindle Group, who is the Excel Partners in Energy consulting firm that's helping us with our EV readiness plan as well as our Partners in Energy program. We met with them to talk about what the potential scope and budget of something like this would look like, and that's where we got the number from. I will tell you that I've done a climate action plan in my past, for past organizations. A lot of the reason for the price is based on public engagement. A lot of planning exercises now today are a planning exercise with a huge public engagement component, and really that's a big driver to those efforts. As you know, with our comp plan, we have, I would say, a significant majority of our budget for the comp plan, even though it's being done in-house, is dedicated for community engagement. So that's a couple of variables. But Councilmember Brown, the other thing I would point out is that I've been talking with Becky about the sustainability plan and the greenhouse gas inventory that we've done, and trying to understand what of those components might actually be a baseline for a climate action plan or an update to that information, which may not require the same level. And that's the reason why we're giving you a range, is because we've really not had a chance to get into a more granular level of a hard number that would be able to provide that.
So for clarification on this topic, so the slide that's up, the climate action plan one-time funds is actually under a bullet looking at 22, 23. Is that when the request is?
So the request currently, my impression was it was an idea, suggestion out of last week's meeting, but it's not currently in the budget. So if council decided not to fund it in 2022, it'd be something that would be brought forward in a future budget year. So it's not currently budgeted in the proposed budget.
Okay. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So my understanding from Mayor Pro Tem Wilford was to move this to be included in this budget. And I mean, I think it is an important thing we need to do, and the longer we put off, the more we may have to deal with, try to mitigate. So my personal preference would be to include it. Try to move forward sooner. That's my perspective on it.
Councilmember Brown, we were in the middle of your comments. Did you want to finish? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was me.
I forgive you. I won't call you names. I think that where I'm struggling is to fund something, that we really haven't had a discussion about. I would be willing to bring it to, I would prefer to bring it into a study session, talk a little bit more about it, and then bring it in as a supplemental budget addition after we approve the original budget. That would be my suggestion, because as it looks right now, I just don't think that, I mean, I understand this first study, and I understand that we've, done other money for other studies, but I just don't. I mean, there was a lot of conversation around this down to the salaried person, which Heather said, that isn't for this, or that this isn't for that. I just don't feel like I have enough information where 100,000 to 150,000 is going to go. I mean, yes, it's a study, but this is a range. We haven't even tied down how much, how much of a variance we could get in there and what we're going to look for, or anything like that. So I would be willing to bring it forward in a study session, really get down to the roots of it, and bring it in as a supplemental amendment to the budget.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? Councilmember Downing?
I'm considering it. I do like the suggestion that Councilwoman Brown suggests at this point. I don't think there has been a thorough conversation by the City Council.
Councilmember Lukman-Hiramasa?
Thank you, Mayor. Same here. I would like to support it, but I think, because I have so many questions, I would like to know what would be included in the study, what we're looking at, what possible outcomes of the study would look like, what, everything would look like moving forward for the city. So I would love to have a study session first. I like Councilmember Brown's suggestion of, doing something. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
I would just agree. I am leaning towards it because, it is one of our 8 priority areas and we're not really doing much as far as sustainability. But I think it's reasonable to have a discussion.
Me too.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Great. We will bring that back to you before the end of the year.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jason. Thanks, Brooke.
Okay. So I will mention the first numbers that you're going to hear, the most important numbers that we're going to hear. And these are the actual appropriations that are being considered in the budget to be approved. So what that means is that's the approval to spend these dollars. So these are the most important of all the numbers that we're going to talk about. This will be something that comes forward in a resolution in a couple of weeks. And so before I start on the revenue forecast for the next year, I will just mention these just to make sure that I don't forget later on. So the general fund proposed appropriation is $34,556,241. The conservation trust fund proposed appropriation is $890,000. The capital projects fund proposed appropriation is $41,502,945. The water fund appropriation as proposed, $21,738,743. The wastewater fund appropriation as proposed, $6,147,580. The stormwater fund appropriation as proposed, $533,488. And lastly, the sanitation fund appropriation as proposed, $1,907,803, for a total appropriation for the 2022 budget of $107,276,800. I feel better saying all of that. So,
Councilmember Brown, did you have a question?
Yeah, what page are you on, Jason? Because I'm not seeing, there's only one page, 22 of 246, that gives me a number. Other than that, I couldn't follow along with you. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. That's on page 1 of the memo.
Okay.
And then throughout the presentation, all of these numbers will be broken out as individual funds.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Of course. So going into 22 revenue forecast, again, we've talked about strong revenue growth and sales tax playing a part in being able to expect, I guess, looking at our forecast to see a strong revenue for ending 2021 and then going forward into 2022. Preliminary tax, property tax assessed valuation that we received August 25th from the county was up 9.2%. That will be made final December 10th. Not expecting, typically we don't see much of a change from the preliminary valuation to the final, but up 9.2% is fairly significant in a year-over-year figure. In the budget, 5.3% blended utility rate increase, again, implementing year 5 of 5 of the water and wastewater rate study from 2017. And then touching on one-time revenues that we'll see in some later slides and how that is impactful to the operations of the city overall. On the expenditure side, as city manager already mentioned, bringing more alignment with strategic priorities in our capital projects investment, so I won't go through those things again. But here on this slide, the proposed 2022 budgets for the general fund. We'll highlight the $2 million transfer for the residential street program that just gets transferred from the general fund to the capital projects fund. And then the additional electric and hybrid vehicle investment that we mentioned. So here's what you'll see, total revenues, expenditures, the net change, in fund balance, and then the ending fund balance of $24.7 million as proposed. This next slide shows our general fund long range forecast. There's some assumptions built in here with revenue growth, going back to some historical trends, and looking at current happenings with one-time revenues. In those assumptions in years 22, 23, and 24. You'll see expenditures get to more normalized growth rates in the out years after the implementation of the 5-year staffing plan. Pausing that in 2023, so we have 2022 staffing plan included and 2023 in that 5-year or longer range staffing plan. That's paused after 2023. You can see the impact. Again, all forecasts are wrong. As soon as they're created, I mean, there's variables that we're unaware of. So this is our best estimate of the long range plan in the general fund, knowing what we know today. It's I hate to say that it's wrong, but it will certainly change over the next several months, I'm sure. Here's a look at our general fund reserves. I had mentioned ending 2022 estimate of $24.7 million. You can see the chart, kind of continued growth from 2015 of 19.5 million, all the way up to 27.3 is what we were forecasting to end 2021. And then you'll see the 25%, that's the required reserve level that council has established. That includes the 3% for Tabor, and then as well 22% for our operations. So that line is about $8 million. So we have $16 million, the 24 to the 8 of available funds that are considered non-restricted. I'll move on to other funds briefly. 2022 Conservation Trust Fund proposed budget. Major project here, Kiwanis pool repairs. We're considering lottery proceeds to be flat year over year, about $430,000. In the Capital Projects Fund, major projects, again, Kiwanis pool will be funded out of both funds. The Civic Center Master Plan Phase 2, the new City Hall, a residential street program. Those are some of the big ticket items. We'll see a list of capital projects later on. But an ending fund balance here of over $12 million after total expenditures of over $41 million. You'll see the debt service of $4.1 million. So that includes the COPs for the Justice Center and for the new Recreation Center. In the Water Fund, again, I've touched on the revenues there, the debt service, payment of just over $1 million. That will pay off in 2022, the Stanley Lake pipeline debt that we had. So that will be ending, and that's an achievement there. We had refinanced that in, I think about 10 years ago, and ended up saving several millions of dollars doing that. So we'll be glad to get that off the books. And then in the wastewater fund, again, revenues I touched on, expenditures of $4.8 million, to include the debt service for the new project this year of the Force Main and Lift Station of $1.3 million, with an ending fund balance of $1.6 million there. The Stormwater Fund, no proposed change to rates, and a significant project there will be the Huron Street line replacement using the ARPA funds. That is rolled into a couple of different funds in the 2022 budget to include Capital Projects Fund and the Water Fund for pipeline replacement and road projects. And then the Sanitation Fund, again, no proposed changes to the service rates, and major capital project other than the ongoing operations is replacement of a vehicle for an ending fund balance in that fund of $2,066,277. So moving on, unless anybody had any questions about any of the funds, there's 200 or so pages behind this presentation of detail that we can definitely jump into if we desire. But I'll go on to the personnel budget. Total FTE being proposed is 328.79 full-time equivalents. Personnel budget includes 3% increase for non-sworn employees, a 2% market increase for sworn employees, plus their steps for police officers, and then including health insurance increase of a small amount of 1.5%. So we were lucky in that regard for our health insurance premiums. This next chart really just shows a slide to show historic staffing levels dating back to 2003 and moving forward. And then the next slide, we have seen this before, a breakdown of staffing by function. I'll touch on the staffing additions that are being proposed. We've seen this before. I won't bore you with reading it all. We're going to touch on the Parks and Recreation in just a moment. But in the city manager area, 5.5 FTE, police, 7 FTE. Several of those positions have actually been approved by council in 2021 and are being funded by grants, either through ARPA or community policing grant. In Parks and Recreation, again, many of these had been approved in the prior year budget. We just weren't realizing all of the FTE because of the timing of the opening of the rec center, where we were only capturing about a quarter of the position. So many of those are included here. And then Public Works, additional support for traffic calming and just residential streets overall to serve the community. And then I'll turn it over to Amanda Peterson to touch on, in a little bit more detail, the parks and parks maintenance staffing requests. And she's right here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So just as Jason mentioned, would like to provide you with some additional information specifically about the parks maintenance positions that we have requested this year. These 2 additional FTEs, we have 3 positions I'm going to take this off while I'm speaking with you. We have 3 total park maintenance positions that we have requested, and that's a results in 2 additional FTEs. One is to transition our seasonal FTEs, or a portion of our seasonal, into a regular year-round position. And then the other 2 are truly new FTEs for the department. Our current staffing level, we have 14 park maintenance workers, 2 coordinators, and 1 supervisor, for a total of 17 full-time staff. Historically, we have had 14 park maintenance workers since about 2011. So our change there is just in those 2 coordinators we've added in recent years. And these additional 2 FTEs really are in response to both the feedback we've received from council over the last few months, as well as the feedback we've received from our own staff. So our park, just to give you a little overview of what our parks maintenance staff are maintaining, they have approximately 568 acres of public property to maintain. It includes 22 developed parks at 180 acres, 3 nature areas, and 3 open spaces at a total of 172 acres, and then our rights of way at about 216 acres. We're actually working with our GIS staff right now to update all of those numbers to make sure that those are current. We also have about 39 miles of trail. That includes our off-street hard surface trails, not our soft surface trails that we have within our, primarily our open spaces. It does include sidewalks along arterials in some instances when we do snow removal in those locations. This slide is really just to break down that huge number into something that's manageable to see what that really means. So 568 acres of parks, how do we relate to that? So that's a total of 7,840,800 square feet of just our developed park spaces. So those are our parks like EB Rains that have irrigated turf, that have playgrounds, that have those amenities people are going and using. A residential lot, we assume to be about 5,000 square feet of outdoor space, considering Northglenn's lots are relatively, are relatively large. So if you divide those out, that's equal to about 1,568 residential properties. And we have 16 full-time parks maintenance staff as of 2021 to maintain those. So if you break that down further, that means each staff member is responsible for the maintenance of about 490,000 square feet, or the equivalent of 98 residential properties. And that's just our developed park spaces. If you were to add in our right-of-way, it's significantly more. So we just did the math to see what that works out. That means if every park staff equally divided just the daily maintenance on all of our properties, both developed parks and open space and right-of-ways, that's about 8 minutes for each space that's equivalent to a residential property. It's not totally apples to apples, again, just meant to illustrate how much space we have to maintain. So some of the basic responsibilities, I don't think I need to go through this whole list, but what's important here is that, or what's of note, I guess, is we did ask some of our neighboring communities what their staffing levels were, what their maintenance levels were, what types of things they do. In that initial outreach, we got some responses. We've actually received more since then and are still compiling that data. But of this list, I highlighted those items that in some of our surrounding communities are actually contracted out. In the responses I've gotten in the last couple of days, we had some additional communities note they also contract or contract in lieu of some of these items, cleaning restrooms, weed control, and turf fertilization.
Amanda, before you move on, can I
Yes.
ask a question about that?
Of course.
So would it save us money to contract out those same activities?
Not necessarily. So, some of the, I'm trying to remember, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. We've done an assessment in years past. We could certainly go back and look at that again. But one community, just hazard trees, was like $87,000.
Okay.
So they're large numbers for sure.
Can I ask which communities you actually reached out to?
I reached out to each of the communities in Adams County. I have not yet heard back from Thornton, or I just got Brighton's back today. I heard back from Broomfield. I feel like this is a quiz and I'm failing. Wheat Ridge, who's not in Adams County but had some similarities to us. There were about 8 communities that are on that list so far.
Thank you.
But Adams County, and then some that had some similarities to us. So continuing with that, we really do limited contracting. We contract for a small amount of hazard tree removal. We contract our portable restroom maintenance, mosquito control, and our pond and lake testing and treatment, which is also supported and through the Water and Wastewater Division. Other responsibilities, and again, some of these are things other communities do, some they don't. It's tough to do apples to apples because we are all unique. But we also are responsible for holiday lights, snow removal, sports field prep, pest management, special event support, outdoor recreation support, playground inspections, and then a variety of maintenance projects that occur throughout the year.
So may I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
With the responsibilities that I'm looking at, is Stonehawker open space included in any of this? I mean, you and I have talked about the maintenance of the property.
Yes, and we'll certainly talk further about what else we can do out there. It's included in the overall open space figure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So some additional or newer responsibilities that have been added over the last 5 to 10 years as we've continued to see that an increase. We haven't necessarily gained a lot of park properties, but we've changed some of the things that we do. We have added 3 major events per year. I have Magic Fest listed there. I know that one's changing as we go on, but we would expect something will take its place. These are multi-day and high-impact events, and the scope of some of our other events has expanded over the years. We've added 4 movies in the park. We have taken on the 6 concerts in the park, which previously had a theater seasonal that were associated with those, as well as multiple smaller events like the food truck grab and go events that were added last year. We have also seen a significant increase in landscaped right-of-way. Things like Huron and 112th weren't improved landscaping years ago. Those have been added as time has passed. And then Justice Center West Park, which is a portion of that property was obtained several years ago and is currently maintained as open space. Whoops, too far. So some of the 2021 challenges that we encountered were just our staffing levels. We were not able to fill all of the positions that we had funding for. So that's piece one. We figure we were at about 60% of our budgeted positions between seasonals, positions that we were not able to fill at all, or who've worked a shorter season, or our full-time staff who are on leave, or full-time vacancies. Some of the potential solutions, and those are things we deal with on a year-to-year basis, usually not quite at that level. Some potential solutions are to add that full-time position in lieu of those 3 seasonal positions. That's already included in the proposed budget, as well as to assess the use of contracted services when there's future staffing gaps. And I've already talked with staff about how they do that earlier in the season. So when they reach that spring hiring date and they're not getting the staff that they need, turning around, identifying what that gap may be, and understanding if we might be able to use contractors to fill in those gaps for that season. That being said, we also have ongoing challenges that aren't related just to that gap we experienced this year. We have the additional workload that was outlined on some of the previous slides. And again, this is just anecdotal, but historically our staffing level really has been at that lower limit. As far back as 2005, the budget document referenced level of service on a scale of 1 to 3 for each department and identified that parks maintenance was unable to exceed a level 1 at the staffing level and the number of acres that there was to maintain. We have increased staff slightly since then, but it's not a significant change. So I think that's important to note that as we talk to our staff, as we hear what your concerns are and what your desires are for park maintenance, in order to continue to achieve that, we really feel like it's important to add to our park maintenance staff so that they can meet those expectations on a daily basis. And so they can weather some of those challenges like what we faced this year. Because there will always be challenges. There will always be something that we add something new, that we have a position that's vacant, that we have something that changes. There was a lot of it this year, but having 2 additional staff members we think could help us be able to continue to achieve those goals and continue to be able to provide a high level of service to the community. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about those before I turn things back to Heather and Jason.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Amanda, for that explanation. It's definitely helpful, and as well as for the research that you've done on surrounding communities and how their staff operates. I've got a couple of questions here for you. First, I'm just curious, with you noting that there's historically been some staffing issues in terms of, I guess, recruiting or workers and then perhaps retaining them, like how has your department been more aggressive, or have you thought outside of the box in terms of being more aggressive in getting these workers into Northglenn? I see it that you've taken 3 seasonal FTE and you're pushing them into 1 full-time FTE, and that's a I like that strategy a lot. But I guess I'm just curious, like, knowing that this has been a problem in the past, what are you doing in the future?
So I would say this year was by far the biggest challenge we have faced. In past years, it hasn't been quite this hard, particularly on full-time positions. We generally are able to keep those filled, and our staff generally has significant longevity. We don't see a high level of turnover in those roles. We did see some turnover that happened in 2020 and 2021. So that also creates a little bigger gap, right? As you have newer staff on board who are learning those roles and not as many of our more seasoned staff members, it takes a little longer to get things done. As for those seasonal roles, again, anecdotally, we didn't hire any seasonals in 2020. That means we didn't have those seasonals to invite back as our base in 2021. We may have had seasonals who worked for us in 2019 who moved on to other positions in 2020 because we did not hire those seasonal positions. So I think that having that gap probably impacted us to some degree. I think having that strategy in place of assessing earlier, making sure that staff don't feel like, okay, we just have to do it with what we have. If we're not getting qualified applicants, understanding that early and pivoting so that they can use a different approach.
Okay, I guess the other question I have is, I'm just curious, are 3 new FTE enough? Our residents spend a ton of time in our parks. They really want to ensure that the parks that they're spending time at are well kept, that there's that attention to detail and that they feel safe, and frankly, that the parks are clean. Are 3 FTE enough in order to, I guess, get us on track to meet that expectation of our residents?
I think it's a really good start. As we've mentioned during some of the previous presentations, there is a 5-year staffing plan in place. You'll see that it's not defined for parks, but there is a note in there that says we will look at that after we have done the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update that's scheduled for 2022. And I really think that gathering that input, hearing what our community members have to say, giving staff that kind of opportunity to catch up, hopefully, will really help guide that conversation as we look to the 2023 budget.
Okay, but I'm hearing that if you get to a point in 2022 where you feel like there are gaps, that you are going to seek contractors so that expectations are being met.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown?
My question was right around with Councilmember Wilfort's. After seeing that magnificent facility and everything around it, I had the same question. Are you sure that you have enough people to maintain that? But I mean, from me right now, you could get just about anything because you just have done such a fabulous job with the rec center and everything else that you've done. But I just want to make sure that you're, you and Heather are keeping your eyes on the prize and we don't, we have enough people. Because as Councilmember Wilford said, everybody loves our parks. And, we have a big focus on the rec center, but everybody loves the parks too. So that's all I have to say is just make sure that in your gut, you really think 3 people are enough.
I think 3 people with all of our positions full should make a tremendous difference.
Okay.
So
if you think so, then I'm good with it.
I have a couple questions. I think I had the same question going back to the contractor slide. I just wonder if it would be better for the city if we contracted out some of these. 3 people is great, but I was thinking a little bit about quality, and I know we were understaffed, but we tend to mow, but we don't tend to edge and trim.
Correct.
And if that was a staffing thing, that's understandable. If it's something where maybe it is cheaper in the long run, it would be interesting to see that study. And it may be too old, and I don't know, For example, if Westminster spends $89,000 on tree trimming, would we? Maybe not. So I'm just wondering about that study a little bit.
So again, still gathering data. I just actually sent it back to each of those cities today, asking them to confirm. Trying to get all of that as apples to apples as possible is a little bit of a challenge. So there's been some back and forth in that process. I do have a contract amount to do just our right-of-ways as we head into the fall this year. And I will say it's a significant amount as we look at even just one mowing of each of those spaces. I don't have them off the top of my head, but it's not comparable to having full-time staff.
Okay.
Edging and trimming is absolutely in our list of regular maintenance activities that should be done every time they're in the park. But when they're short, they mow and then they're moving on to the next to try to get those most visible items done on a regular schedule.
Yeah, unfortunately to residents, when you mow and leave the trimming, it's really noticeable. So it does make sense to mow and move on, but it sort of leaves it as a glaring concern. Another question I had, it looks like 9 possibly of the positions are related to the rec center. And then I go back to Jason's forecast slide. Is there a hope or an assumption that the rec center will generate the revenue to pay for these at some point?
In just the recreation positions, not the parks positions, in the assessment that was done prior to the start of the construction of the new facility, the staffing plan was created out of that assessment. The positions that were added were offset by anticipated additional revenues. I would say the one exception to that is that we did increase our minimum wage between the time that study was done and now. So there is there's potential that there's some gap that would not be fully realized. But the intention is that new revenues matched those new positions that were added. And I believe the study identified at the end of the second full year of service. I believe Jason included a more conservative estimate as the end of the third year of service. Because when that study was done, no one knew what COVID was or that we would be facing a year and a half of shutdowns and transitioning back into in-person. So that may look different than what that initial assessment showed.
Okay, thank you.
We're hoping not, but.
Heather, this question is for you. I love graphs, but sometimes they tell a story that's a little scary. So if we look at the slide on page 32, I think we should be prepared as a council and a staff to explain 50 FTE in the last 2 years, when our population hasn't grown necessarily because we're a little landlocked. Now, we know that's going to change in the future, but in the last 2 years, 50 FTE it's incredible, and could be hard to explain to residents. So when we look, and I so appreciate that this budget presentation breaks down where the people are from last year to this year, but if you take kind of a double jump, it's a total of 50 people.
It is. I mean, and that's significant. That's not insignificant. And it's tied to level of service and council vision, staff vision, and where we believe the community wants us to go. So any suggestions on how we can better communicate that, continue to talk with staff. It's not something that, like I said, is insignificant, but we need to, as we move forward, continue to demonstrate that there's value to the residents. So that's the key piece. The residents are going to receive greater level of service and value through these positions.
Absolutely. And I think unfortunately that falls on you. Because, I mean, it does, and also Chief and Amanda as well, as far as, because a lot of those are in parks and police. And those are public services that we provide that we are 100% in support of. But residents are going to say, okay, well then crime should go down. And all the stuff that makes them crazy, speeding, et cetera, you know, these problems should go away if we're putting this kind of money in people that work for our city. So if we can continue to go back to that and showcase I mean, I think the rec center is a perfect example, right? We have more people working for the city to provide this amazing experience for you. It's a great example, but I worry about this huge jump in 2 years' time and being able to explain that.
You're spot on in terms of your comments, Mayor, and it's something that we have to monitor on an annual basis, and we have to be demonstrating that we're providing value to the community. We are in an economic time and a financial position as a community that we can afford these positions. If we weren't in the position we were in, we would be having a different conversation. We wouldn't be looking at growth, and we wouldn't be looking at additions, and we'd be looking at this is our minimal level of service, and I would be in front of you saying, we can't do this. We cannot provide what you're asking me to provide without people. So we're very conscious of that. I am, as well as my executive team, and we'll continue to do everything we can to monitor. Amanda and I have had numerous conversations, and we are in a difficult position relative to parks maintenance and a very reactive position. The staff is working so hard to keep up, and I appreciate their commitment and what they're doing day in and day out. I think one of the things to demonstrate, in reference to the comment about crime increasing, I cannot make a commitment tonight that with additional positions, crime's going to decrease. And I know you're not asking me to do that, but one of the conversations Amanda and I have been having is in relationship to the tunnel under I-25. And so we know that our challenges related to persons experiencing homelessness have grown. So parks maintenance staff has been going into the tunnel on a daily basis and spending anywhere from approximately 2 hours plus cleaning the tunnel on a daily basis. I mean, they could be going in there twice, but that's the sort of scenario where Amanda and I are like having conversations about, well, maybe that's a service that we contract out. Because does it make sense for a crew of 2 to 4 parks maintenance staff members to be doing that cleaning, which on some days involves power washing the tunnel floor because of everything that's, resulted from usage of the tunnel and so forth. And we need to keep that tunnel passable. We need to keep it clean. We'll have more conversation around the tunnel when we dive into the SEPTED analysis that'll be conducted next year. But we're trying to do, really take proactive steps now, because we know the connectivity that ties into the Civic campus area. But there's significant challenges that aren't just gonna go away. It's gonna be continual work and creativity on our part in partnership with council and figuring out what's that right formula for addressing them.
Absolutely. Has the presentation been completed?
No, Jason's got a few more slides.
Okay.
But it'll go super fast.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, where were we? So the next couple of slides just summarize the capital improvement projects that total around $48 million. On page 195 of the packet, that starts the more detailed analysis of the capital improvements with a narrative about what each of the projects are. So we will not skip to 195 and start reading, but if you'd like, that's where the capital projects information sits. And then I think that this is going to be the last thing, the long-term obligations. We kind of had touched on those. So these are the final amounts that will be due at the end of 2021 that we'll be paying on over the next few years. And then the year at the end, that's when the final payment will be made, unless there's some sort of refunding, refinancing for those projects. So that's just a breakout of those long-term obligations for you. And then future budget meetings, the plan is to come back on October 25th for adoption. And I think we've had good conversation and feedback throughout the meeting, so I'm not sure that there's any final thoughts, but feel free before we turn it over to the public, I guess.
Councilmember Brown?
You know, I totally forgot about something that's near and dear to my heart when we started the budget discussions. And I don't know if Heather remembers it or not, but when Northglenn first started doing the green trash cans that we do that the residents have to pay for, there was a first and second round of those trash cans. In that first and second round, those residents cannot purchase lids for. In every other round since then, our residents can purchase lids by themselves without having to purchase a new trash can. And as round 1 and round 2 go, those trash cans are getting really ragged, and they have no other option rather than spending, I think Brooke's there, $10 or $15 for a lid. Those people that have round 1 and round 2, they have to pay for the full trash can. Did we ever come up with a decision on that? If we as council and as a city can help those residents?
Councilmember Brown, I recall the request that you had sent about this. Ken, I thought we provided a response. I thought Rob did. So do we need an additional appropriation for this item, or is this something we need to bring back at a study session?
I don't recall it. And
Okay.
I don't know if it's part of the waste optimization as we move forward, or I know that we have a 10-year warranty on the cans, and I'm not sure about lid replacement.
Okay, Councilmember Brown, I will put this on my to-do list and bring information back to council at the next council meeting, if that works.
That works for me. I'm sorry that I forgot about it until so long.
No, I didn't forget about it. I thought we took care of that particular resident. So let me follow up on it, and I'll provide council with additional information.
And Heather, just to clarify, I was saying I forgot about it to bring it forward sooner. Not you, me.
Well, now that she mentions it, I want a new lid. How do I get one?
Everybody wants a
I
new
need
lid.
a new lid.
Well, if you were in the first round trash cans, can't get one.
Really?
I have residents that screwed them with pieces of wood.
How do we know?
Is it the logo?
How do we know what trash can I'm in? Okay. Well, anyway, we'll go back to the public hearing if anyone has any other questions. All right, here we go. I will now open the public hearing on the proposed 2022 annual operating and capital improvement budget. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the proposed budget? All right, well, hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Second public hearing, CB 1976. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for a special ordinance amending the 2021 budget, recognizing revenues and appropriating expenditures by supplemental appropriation for the payment of the costs and expenses of the municipal government, agencies and offices of the City of Northglenn, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2021.
I will now open the public hearing on CB 1976. Is there anyone who would like to speak on CB 1976? Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak either for or against? You can unmute yourself by pressing 6. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Ordinances on second reading, CB 1976. Is there a motion to approve on second reading?
Move for approval.
Second.
Please open the vote. Oh, We're okay. Yes, do you want to? Yeah, please open the vote. Sorry.
It's up to you whether you want a presentation.
No, please open the vote.
Councilmember Brown, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I will close that vote, and CB 1976 on second reading passes unanimously.
Excellent. All right, resolutions. We have one tonight, CR 110. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Northglenn and the Colorado State Patrol Auto Theft Intelligence Coordination Center regarding license plate recognition system data sharing.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, Deputy Police Chief Darlin is here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So the Police Department is requesting a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with the Colorado State Patrol and the Auto Theft Intelligence Coordination Center, known as ATIC. The MOU creates an information sharing system designed to replicate, maintain, and share law enforcement license plate reader systems from all participating public safety agencies. So the background on this is essentially, back in January, City Council approved the purchase of an LSAG ALPR, an automated license plate reader, a mobile system to be installed into one of our patrol vehicles. That system was installed into one of our patrol vehicles within the last month. And in order to utilize the data systems and the software within that program, we need a memorandum of understanding with the Colorado State Patrol through this ATIC to utilize the software and then to share the data amongst the other agencies that also utilize this system software statewide. It's the Colorado LSAG. LSAG is the actual software. It's the brand name of the software that we utilize. And then the Colorado LSAG Operations Center, it's an initiative of the Colorado State Patrol that provides information and guidelines to law enforcement agencies that desire to access or share information with the Colorado LSAG EOC. So the basic concept of the mobile plate reader is it identifies license plates automatically. The cameras are within the car, and when the car drives by a license plate that's parked, stopped, moving in traffic, it'll read the plate automatically. It'll run it through the data systems that are utilized by state police as well as Northglenn Police Department, and it'll identify stolen motor vehicles. It'll identify vehicles that are used in criminal conduct that have been put as lookout vehicles. It'll identify driver information for a registered vehicle, whether or not that subject has any warrants or any alerts against the individual. It's used for Amber Alerts. It's used for law enforcement strategies throughout the state. And the idea behind it is that it will assist us in our apprehension of criminal conduct as well as the recovery of stolen vehicles. Stolen vehicles within the city of Northglenn are on a 60% increase over the last year. We currently have up through August of this year, 292 stolen vehicles within the city of Northglenn, which is a 60% increase over the prior year. So this technology is one of the strategies we're utilizing to focus our efforts on recovery of stolen motor vehicles and on the apprehension of criminals involved in the stolen motor vehicles. So this is one of the strategies we're looking for. It's just part of a kind of a prior process we went through with City Council requesting that technology itself. And this is the process for which we will request that memorandum of understanding, and then with the authorization of the City Council, Chief May will sign that memorandum with the Colorado State Patrol. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. Mine is really kind of a technical thing, because if I'm understanding, you have one of these devices for the whole department. Is this something that in the future you're going to anticipate needing them in more vehicles, or how does that, I mean, how effective is it just to be in one car?
Yeah, so it's a great tool, and it is mobile, right? So the car can be moved and manipulated in ways that is going to maximize the opportunity for it, right? I can actually speak with a lot of reference to this. In Chicago, where I was prior deputy chief prior to coming here, we had both fixed and mobile ALPR systems across the city. The mobile ALPR systems have a very significant use because they can be manipulated throughout the city and throughout the department. They can be used in alleys and in areas that are difficult to get to. And for Northglenn, that would be parking lots inside of our dense residential areas, inside of our parks, inside of our open spaces, and inside of our large-scale shopping areas where we can utilize it in a very meaningful way. The fixed technology is excellent in and off of very densely traveled roadways. So the fixed opportunity is more applicable to exits and entrances to highways, exits and entrances to large areas that have one way in, one way out type of venue. So the fixed mobile is or fixed ALPRs are very useful in certain circumstances, but the ALPR that's mobile is actually probably better suited for what Northglenn needs specifically. Could we utilize more vehicles in this type of an endeavor? Sure, we could always utilize more technology and try to utilize it in a more meaningful way. The devices are expensive, they are put into vehicles, and then that vehicle has a fixed limited life plan, so it's a starting point for us, and it's something that if we see good success and our officers are able to utilize it in a very meaningful way, might be something that we would look at expanding in the future. But initially, this is our first venue. Well, we've actually had this technology in the city before, but this is our first one under this process and under this new LSAG.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. So thank you very much. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. Councilmember Brown, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I will close that vote, and CR 110 passes unanimously.
I will now recess the regular city council meeting and call to order a meeting of the Marijuana Licensing Authority. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Lighty.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford. Here. Councilmember Wikovich.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mullica is absent. Councilmember Lukman Hiramasa.
Here.
Okay. We will start with the approval of minutes from September 27th, 2021.
Move for approval.
Second.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Councilmember Brown, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I will close that vote, and the motion to approve the September 27th, 2021 meeting minutes passes unanimously.
All right, CR 112. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
There we go. A resolution making findings of fact in support of the decision to deny a new retail marijuana store license to Discreet Greens LLC.
Move for approval.
Second.
City Attorney Hoffman is here to provide a summary.
Good evening, members of the Marijuana Licensing Authority. The purpose of tonight's resolution is to confirm that these findings of fact memorialize the basis for your decision to deny the marijuana license at the last meeting of the authority, so at the previous meeting of council, acting as the authority. So the public hearing has been completed, and the way in which the process works is that it's my job to bring back findings of fact, take from what I heard and from the notes that I took that are intended to reflect the basis for your decision. So if I didn't get it right, now is absolutely the time. If this does adequately summarize the basis for your decision to deny the license, then I would recommend approval.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Councilmember Goff?
Sorry, I couldn't get that button click. So I just want to verify that what we are going to vote on, like a yes vote, is that this is adequately describing what happened, has nothing to do with the decision itself.
That has
It
nothing.
doesn't have anything to do with the decision itself. It's like not a vote for or against permitting.
Correct. The decision was made at the last meeting. This is affirming that this is the basis for the decision.
Mayor Pro Tem Walker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I couldn't find the blue button. Corey, I feel like that there's one piece that's missing, and I may be completely wrong, but I feel like there was a piece around the traffic implications and the traffic concerns. Wasn't that a piece of Councilmember Downing's concerns that she voiced?
There was a question raised by Councilmember Downing related to that. The difficulty was, it was a question, there was a traffic study and no evidence in opposition, only Councilmember Downing's questions about the traffic study. I can certainly add something if that's the authority's direction, but the reason I did that is that there was not any.
Okay, that makes sense.
The evidence
Yeah.
didn't, there wasn't any contrary evidence to the traffic study.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
So I'm looking at the 1, 2, 3. So number 1, this was a question that we had received from a resident. So by voting yes, we are essentially saying that we're not going to approve any additional requests based on number 1?
No. What you are saying is that this licensee did not present evidence satisfactory to the authority to show that the needs and desires were adequate today. There could be another evidentiary presentation at a different location that is eligible at some future date. So this is only about this particular application. Having said that, if council has questions about whether there is already a saturation, if you will, then that is something where you may want to revisit your ordinance as well.
Okay. Is there a need to replace city council with marijuana licensing authority throughout this whole document?
There is not. It's the city council acting as the licensing authority, but it is still the city council that acts as the final decision maker.
We just, closed one meeting and opened a new one, and I thought, well, now I'm confused. Okay. Yeah, as long as that's fine. Any other questions? Okay. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Councilmember Brown, how do you vote?
I would just like a clarification. I'm sorry, Corey. If I vote yes, it means that I agree with the denial?
If you vote yes, it means that you agree that this resolution adequately describes the basis for the finding of denial at the previous meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
So my panel's not open, is it?
I'm sorry?
For the voting,
What happened?
my panel to vote?
Is it gone?
It's not in the bubbles.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
here,
I see.
but I don't have the yes or no bubbles. Yeah.
The votes are open.
Can you refresh it? Would that bring it back?
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, I will close that vote, and CR 112 passes with 1 no vote cast by Councilmember Wikovich.
I will now adjourn the meeting of the Marijuana Licensing Authority and reconvene the regular city council meeting. Our discussion item for tonight, Stanley Lake Security Assessment Update. Tamara Moon, Environmental Manager, is here to provide an update.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to just give a quick update on the status of the Stanley Lake Security Assessment. The Stanley Lake Security Assessment was an item that was added into the Stanley Lake Park intergovernmental agreement that this city council approved late last year. The security assessment has been kind of developed, the scope of work has been developed by staff from Northglenn, Thornton, and Westminster to kind of create a solid look at what the risks to water quality at Stanley Lake are and how we mitigate those risks. In order to do that, we have created the scope of work and put out an RFP for consultants. We are proposing as the group to hire Corona Environmental Consultants. They are a local group that is very familiar with Stanley Lake and does this sort of security assessment work frequently. So we're moving forward with hiring that consultant. The City of Westminster is proposing to pay the initial $163,000 for the cost of the work, and then Northglenn and Thornton will reimburse to City of Westminster our respective 1/3 of that cost. And that was the proposal that was placed in the IGA that the council agreed to or signed on to in 2020. So if there's questions based on the memo, or if you'd like any additional information about the consultant, I'm happy to answer those questions.
I mean, this may be a dumb question, but is this the type of thing that is often just split in thirds? It's not by population?
You know, we have the Stanley Lake Operating Committee, which works off of, we call it the four-way agreement. Under that agreement, the costs for the work at Stanley Lake under that group is split a third, and a third. So it's pretty typical of how the three cities have in the past generally agreed to split costs.
And Corey's nodding, that's an okay thing? Okay. We're so much smaller than our neighbors that just seems interesting. Okay. Any questions or comments for Tamara? No? Okay. Well, thanks for letting us know.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, moving into public invited to be heard. Is there anyone in the audience? Nope. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak to council at this time? I don't think we have anybody. Nope. Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to section 4.5G of the City of Northglenn Home Rule Charter for negotiations regarding the P3 Civic Campus project. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Councilmember Brown, how do you vote?
I don't want to stay late tonight. So I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, I will close that vote, and the motion to adjourn to executive session passes unanimously.